For more than 5 years, the HCMA has brought people together through online discussion groups for newly diagnosed patients, caregivers, women with HCM, and young adults. You are never more than a few hours away from support, understanding, and shared experience. This February, HCMA launches a new men's group. Find the next discussion on the events page at our website.
To Tales from the Heart, a podcast from the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association. I'm Lisa Salberg, and I am your host today, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Marty Maron, or Marty Maron as he's on the screen today. Good morning, Marty.
Good morning, Lisa. How are you? Always good to be with you here.
Always great to have you here. It is February 13th, so it's Friday the 13th. That's always fun. And it is one day away from my go home from the hospital with a new heart day, also known as Valentine's Day, and also known as National Donors Day. So most people don't remember that it's also National Donors Day. So it's been 9 years. And as we get started on this podcast, we're going to be covering a couple things today. We're going to be talking about HCM Awareness Day. We're going to talk about a new survey that the HCMA is launching. We are going to talk about a really great public awareness campaign that Marty and I know a little bit about. And a couple of other topics will pop up as we go through why HCM awareness is important and why Heart Month is so important. And some of those stories that make us remember why we do what we do every day. So, Marty, let's start with talking a little bit about how a snowstorm ruins an opportunity to be together in New York a couple of weeks ago. But we did actually have the opportunity to participate, some virtually, some in person, in a launch of a new public awareness campaign. So I want to tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So there's a really well done patient educational campaign called On Track with HCM that is sponsored by a company, Cytokinetics, provided the support for that. But it's a completely unbranded educational tool, really, for patients is what it really is. And it involves really at its core a patient, Willie McLaughlin, who is a patient, of course, with HCM. Willie has a remarkable story and journey with HCM that includes heart transplant. And he's continuing to do really well after that, of course, but had an amazing and very impactful story to tell and does about HCM. And Willie is sort of at the core of this on track with HCM patient sort of educational tool and resource. And Willie is actually joined as part of this by his daughter, who is somebody that many may actually recognize, Sydney McLaughlin, who is one of the greatest U.S. women's track and field stars of all time. Currently holds the world record, I believe, in the 400 hurdles for women. She's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and her dad is Sydney. Her dad is Willie. So Sydney's dad is Willie, and so together, really, they and Sydney really provides, as part of this, a lot of really important insights into her living with Willie, her take on HCM from a family and support standpoint, and kind of give some really important angles and insights, from that vantage point. And so Sydney and Willie together kind of narrate this. And what it is really, it's an opportunity online to access a lot of really, really good information about how to live and deal with and engage with HCM from beginning to end. Really covering all different kinds of aspects, from how to stay healthy otherwise, including nutrition and exercise, to advice on, how to engage your physician, et cetera. And so it really runs the whole gambit, and it really does provide, I think, a way to be on track, as the title says, with living with HCM. And so it was very well done. It's a very nice production. And I think patients and their family members will find it very helpful, particularly when there are challenges that come up in terms of navigating one's journey with HCM. And so that's what it is, On Track with HCM. Maybe you can put up, where patients can find it. Yep.
Already dropped the link. Oh, it's here. We can put it up here.
Yep.
So it's On Track with HCM, just as it's spelled out, no fancy, silly lettering there. And I want to just give a couple more contextual clues here. So Willie has been in our Faces of HCM program for a number of years now. So you may have seen his story there. You may have seen HCMA cheering on Sydney as she was, running for gold medals and announcing her successes. Family announcement, Sydney is expecting a child. She's I think she's due in July. So we've got a baby coming there. So that's congratulations to them. But I want to acknowledge Willie's brother, Russell, who is no longer with us, who did end up needing a heart-lung transplant from advanced HCM and was a member of our community, and many of the HCM Facebook community may remember him doing some live videos back around 2016, 17. So our thanks to the McLaughlin family for sharing their story to help raise awareness in HCM. And I hope you all take a moment to visit the website at some point and dig in a little bit and get some good tips. So I want to give a shout out to them. And it's a really nice program, and it's really family centric. And I really appreciate the work that was done on that. So Marty, it's Heart Month. And that normally means everything else we get to do every day. Then we have to do this little bit of extra because we're all talking about Heart Month and got special projects going on. What is important about Heart Month, and specifically about raising HCM awareness during Heart Month?
Well,
big question.
I mean, yeah, that's a big one. Geez, Lisa, you're going hard on me here.
Last week I made Matt cry, so I'm going easy on you.
Oh my gosh! So you actually saw tears?
It is videotaped. It is witnessed. It was very emotional. It was very sweet. He made me cry.
He's a very sensitive guy. So
he's a very sensitive guy.
Yeah. Right. Good. Well, I think this is an opportunity again, really, I guess, is how I would look at it, for, making a lot of really important points about the need to and how to for patients. Well, let me say back up by saying we visibility, Heart Month, and the opportunity for it to leverage that to increase visibility is, there's nothing more important than that in a way, because visibility is really what drives, the opportunity to help educate patients, family members even more. And it really just creates just the opportunity for greater awareness among our community and outside that, only helps to foster even better opportunities for really engagement with the disease. And that really, I think, to me, mostly is about, the opportunity to educate, and with more education, people can obviously become empowered and feel much more comfortable living with the disease. And so the visibility that really comes with Heart Month and the opportunity to leverage that to again highlight HCM is critical to the mission.
Okay, so let's take a little bit of a historic view of this. I always like going back to see how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
When your dad started studying the scant information that was available through people like Brunwald and Morrow and Tajik back in the late 60s, early 70s, and started to develop an understanding of this disease. Number one, have you had the opportunity, and I believe you have, to really look at the magnitude of the impact of the guy you call dad?
Yeah. Well, yes. I think, yes, I have for sure. Quite a lot, actually. No, I consider it, it's an incredible vantage point in a way to have had the opportunity, continue to have the opportunity, to not just learn from him, but also to hear from him, about, how this whole story of HCM has evolved really since the beginning. And I think with that perspective, it's a unique perspective. Very few people, I think, have the opportunity to have that kind of view on HCM, really from insights into really from the beginning to now in how it has in fact evolved, the ups and downs, the challenges, and really the ability to look at it in that way is really unique. And so I value that tremendously, and I think about it a lot, actually. So no question about it.
Where we are today seems like light years from where we were 7-8 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's great that we've had so much progress. It's a little frightening because we're very slow and now they move very fast. We've got a lot of new opportunities for different drug trials, new developments of diagnostics. It's an exciting time. But should we just go forward with unbridled enthusiasm, or how do we go ahead safely into HCM in the future? How do we control all of the interest right now in our disease state?
You mean I guess I'm not sure I understand. You mean how to, in terms of.
So we went from a slow roll. It took a long time to get our science out there. We never got good placement in meetings 20 years ago. Now we have great placement. We've got great visibility and a lot of people interested. And that's great, but it's a complicated disease to manage. And how do we carefully move forward with research and more clinical trial potentials? How do we build a safer future for HCM?
Yeah, I don't know that I know necessarily exactly what the right answer there is, but I guess what I would say, is, thinking about it as you're asking, is that, I think that what should come with enthusiasm, for example, with progress, should also come with some degree of being measured and perspective on where we still, despite the progress, where there needs to be focus on areas that are still not where they need to be. Okay. And that doesn't mean that we diminish or that diminishes the incredible enthusiasm around progress, but we've got to also balance that with a realistic discussion sometimes about where things may still be falling short. Okay. That is a conversation that's sometimes hard to have, I think, in some ways, because there are a lot of forces at play that try to, suppress or mitigate that a little bit. People want to focus, on all the good, which is obviously natural. But I think we also have to balance it in terms of being measured, as well as really trying to define what we call in medicine the unmet needs still, despite progress, because that is really what will fuel even more progress in terms of meeting gaps. Okay. And as much as we've come along, we still have gaps, of course, and we need to define what those are, even in good times, like right now, to foster progress. So that's kind of what I would say.
I know it was a trick question, but
was that a good answer?
It is a good answer. I think we all need to kind of step into the conversations, whether you're a patient going to your annual appointment saying, okay, what clinical trial opportunities are available for me and how do I know which one is right, and get some input, whether it's a clinician evaluating whether they want to get involved with being a site for a clinical trial. There's a lot of moving parts there. We just need to make the ecosystem work better for everybody and try to advance the science even further so we can keep people healthier longer. So I continue on that effort every day here at the HCMA, and I am going to encourage you all to look behind me if you're watching on podcast. My wall looks a little different today because we have all of our materials out here for HCM Awareness Day, which is on February 25th. We will be conducting a webinar that evening, but during the day, we're going to actually have an open house. And we're encouraging you all to have open houses at your own home, at your place of business, at your school, with your sports team, in your clinic. So we're sending out Party in a Box to everybody, all of our centers of excellence. And those of you who are ambassadors are getting them as well. And if you want, we have a few left in-house. If you want to buy one, it's just the price of shipping and materials. It's $30 a box. And if you want a box for HCM Awareness Day, you will get little pop-up cards with hashtags and QR codes. So you'll know where to get information so you can know HCM, hashtag know HCM. We have new wristbands, we have posters, we have educational charts. We have all kinds of material for you. So this is my sales pitch. Buy one today. Have a nice day. I will go back to regular content now. I feel like I'm doing a commercial when I do that. Okay, something happened. I got an error. That was unusual. Never had an error posting a message. Demi, you want to hit the, I didn't realize you had it over here. Look, there, Demi has the entire code box. So it looks much nicer than looking over my shoulder. So you can get all of these materials and get them to help educate people. And we'll even give you more help if you want to do a PowerPoint presentation. We have some programs that we can send over to you as well. Okay, so Marty, if you want to be an ambassador, Andrew, that is very easy. I want you to call Julie, 973-983-7429, or Julie at 4hcm.org. Tell her you're interested in the ambassador program and she will get you signed up. Okay, so it's Heart Month. And I don't know about you, but I have a mixed relationship with this month because it's great to celebrate the things that we focus on all year long, but it also comes with some baggage and some memories of good and bad, and it's emotional. I'm celebrating the thing that tried to kill me, but I'm celebrating the fact that science was here for me, and we're still here to tell the tale and do the work to support the rest of the HCM community. Are there any stories that stick with you, obviously de-identified? Are there any stories or patients that stick with you that on the days that this is really hard, make you remember it's really all worth it?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. That actually, in a lot of ways, I do think about that a lot, particularly at challenging moments. And it is a source of inspiration and comfort to think about those good stories for sure. I think I'll make the point, I'll make, one point first, just that, I think kind of reflecting back on many years here in HCM, that, I will say that two things, that although there are certainly specific examples of patients that have provided, a lot of inspiration and have been transformational in some ways in terms of experience, I will say also that maybe the greatest inspiration, doesn't necessarily always come from necessarily a single patient or a single patient experience, but rather the cumulative efforts, day to day in HCM, where I really believe, and I know that many of us do in HCM believe this, that with the current therapies that we have, number one, we have an opportunity to have a lot of success in terms of making patients feel better, function better, I think live longer every day, with how we interact with patients that way. And I've talked about this before, but I think that even when I see a patient as well, so I think the therapies and what we can do just day to day, almost for all the patients that we're seeing, is just inspiration itself. But also, too, is that even for those patients for whom they may not need a therapy, but who come here to see their HCM physician, often feeling very frustrated, scared, anxious, what we call kind of on the edge. The opportunity here to educate and to transform an individual patient and the way they look at their disease and their ability to engage with life with their disease, that we have the ability to really, transform them, and bring them off the edge, to provide the kind of, I think, reassurance really, but also comfort that it's going to be okay, and that we are going to be able to provide them the kind of support and education and treatment if they need it, to have a great life. And I think that ability to, what I call, turn the light bulb on, so that patients leave different than when they come, is something that every day I think I feel very fortunate and lucky to be part of, really. And to me, that's Heart Day, or that's Heart Month, and that's what really symbolizes, I should say, Heart Month, particularly for HCM, a disease where, through both education and treatments, every day can in a way be a transformative day.
I agree. There's nothing like taking somebody who comes confused and leaves with clarity and sees that it's not the end, it's just a different path, and they learn how to navigate that path. We have a couple of questions that I'm going to hold off on for just a minute. We will be taking your questions in a moment. I want to bring something else up for you all, and I'm dropping.
I just one other thing, just on that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I would just say that. I think you mentioned, you mentioned, the big guy, my dad, and I think, he's been, he's transformed HCM in so many ways. But I think one of the things I learned probably the most from him in terms of things as well, is that the most important, one of the most important things that we can do is, and you mentioned this word, and it kind of comes to my mind a lot, is clarity. It's really about clarity, okay? Because through clarity comes the ability to engage and understand, and there's comfort after clarity when you're talking about a disease like HCM, where for many decades, and a lot of times still today, there's a lot of gray and there's a lot of confusion, and with the confusion is the anxiety, and with the confusion is the uncertainty and the fear. But with clarity and the ability to deliver clear messages to patients, about their disease and what they can expect today from their disease and treatments, it delivered with that kind of clarity, I think, comes the ability to transform. And so I think you're 100% right about that. It's a skill set that's not easy to do. We take clarity for granted sometimes, but it's an art. And when it can be delivered that way, there is in some ways nothing more powerful than that.
Okay, so I was going to move to something else, but now we're going to dive in on this one. So we've both been doing this for quite a long time. And believe it or not, February meets our 30th anniversary of providing services to the HCM community, which first of all makes me feel really old as the founder, because how could I be doing something for 30 years? Because I think I'm only 30 years old. But in that time, the development of understanding of HCM in the clinical setting outside of academic centers has shifted. And we're seeing more community cardiologists have a deeper understanding of HCM, but still not to the level that a full functioning hypertrophic cardiomyopathy center can do. The nuances of HCM, even though we're getting better at identifying and better at seeing the need for treatment at the community level, I am never I'm never left but in awe of all of the things that HCM can do to the heart and how we need to adjust to each and every patient as an individual, but with the collective knowledge that there's some other rare ones out there like them that we've learned from over the years. And this week I met with a potential new center, young physician, and I said, tell me what you think about HCM. I did my rabbi call. I'll explain that some other day. But as I'm listening to him, your father should be proud. You should be proud. The entire ecosystem should be proud, because this young man who's going to build up a program in a place that needs it has such a good knowledge and understanding, and understands where to get new information from. And I felt very hopeful for the future of HCM clinicians out there in the early career stages. He renewed my faith. It's amazing to see that happen. He had clarity. And if we have a doctor who has clarity and a patient who has the foundations to build better clarity, HCMA starts and helps them get organized. They go to the center. It all makes sense. They find their peers. They help self. They help family. They help community. They help all. And I love that concept. And it's rather satisfying to look back and go, okay, we did a thing and we're helping people. And that's just an awesome way to celebrate our 30th year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the centers of excellence that you really are responsible, in so many ways of helping to, one, put that idea together, but also execute on it, over the last 20 years or so. The centers, we've talked a lot about the centers and, their role in HCM. They're obviously the case for centers is several, of course. The ability that within a center, you're going to have the expertise and knowledge to, diagnose and treat, HCM perhaps differently than non-center, but maybe equally, or maybe in some ways more important, is that by definition, hopefully, the center is a place where patients can get clarity of their disease, right, and situation. That's to me what was the foundational part of this whole building of centers, was to give patients information in a clear, direct, understandable way, that the physicians there had the time, the wherewithal, the skill, the expertise to translate that to patients in a way that can be defined by clarity. And to me, that, when I think of centers, it's not just being able to do a myectomy really well, or to know who should best benefit from a myosin inhibitor, but it's everything else around that when the patient comes in for the visit. Okay. Exactly.
We've got a bunch of questions coming here, so I'm going to hit a couple of announcement type items, and this is an important one.
Okay.
On April 23rd, the HCMA will be holding its second externally led patient-focused drug development meeting. This is an opportunity for us to speak directly to the FDA about what we need in HCM from the therapeutic development community. This PFDD will be focused on genetically based or RNA-based therapies for HCM. We are seeking you to complete a survey, and that has just been dropped now. This survey is done in collaboration with a number of our partners in the genetic heart muscle disorder community, including the Dannon's Foundation, Amyloidosis Consortium, SADS Foundation, and the DCM Foundation, and FARA for a disease that we don't talk about much called Friedreich's ataxia. So all of these organizations have banded together to work on this one PFDD. So we bring multiple stakeholders' views on multiple genetic heart muscle disorders that may be able to be treated by genetic or RNA-based therapies in the future. That regulatory process is a little bit different than a molecule, and we want to make sure that the FDA hears directly from you, the patient, What is your burden of disease? What are you willing to do to treat your disease? What do you want from genetically based therapies? What do you not want from genetically based therapies? This survey is your voice directly to regulators. I need you to fill it out. We've got from now until the 23rd of April to get as many signatures and as many people on this as possible. We're going to be sending it out to all of our centers to send out to all of their patients. We want the entire ecosystem to chime in here. And if you can send that off to family members who might be genetically affected by HCM but not clinically affected, they don't necessarily get in very close contact with us until they have disease. It's really important we hear from those who are gene positive and phenotype negative as well. And we want all the disease states out there. So you're going to be seeing this come a lot on your social media feeds as we push this survey forward. So please take the time to complete it. It doesn't take more than 6 minutes. So just take 6 minutes at lunch today, click, get it done. We'd really, really appreciate it. Marty, you worked with us on our first PFDD and you gave a statement of the disease at that time. Since that day, let's go back. That was 2020, June, middle of COVID. Oh, so fun. We went to the studio and we presented our PFDD and we wrote our Voice of the Patient report. Since that time, we know that the Voice of the Patient was used to help evaluate new drugs coming to market and whether or not there was a need for the patients and was the drug meeting the need of the patient. And the answer was yes. So this is going to look a little different than our original survey because myosin inhibitors weren't on the market when we first launched this. But beyond that, do we want more? Where are the unmet needs? I know the AFib community was very loud in the last PFDD, and I hope we hear from them in this one because there's some new therapies coming forward that may be targeted in that area, and this may help and aid in their development. So it takes a village. Village, please speak up, fill out the survey, and complete it. And the question was, so even if they couldn't find a genetic marker, yes, you can answer the questionnaire if you have a diagnosis of HCM and an unidentified marker at this time. We want to hear from you, but we also want to hear from those who have identified markers and are at a different point in their disease understanding. So that's my announcement for HCM Awareness Day and the survey.
The conversation continues, but first, this quick break. This year, the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association marks 30 years of connecting patients to expert care. During that time, HCMA has recognized more than 60 centers of excellence across the United States. These programs use a multidisciplinary team approach to help you manage life with HCM with access to the latest diagnostics and treatments. One patient says his center helped him finally feel heard and confident in his care. To learn more, visit the HCMA website and use the Centers of Excellence directory to find the right program for you and your family. Once again, here's host Lisa Salberg.
Now I want to go back to look at some questions. So we have some complicated ones here, Marty, and I'm going to start this by saying we may not have the answers to all of your questions today, and this is one of them. Now that mavacamten and aficamten are both on the market and available, and with things evolving so fastly, what does the future look like? Is gene therapy realistic for mutations like MYH7? So where is the ecosystem heading? And the next question we're going to be asked by a lot of people is, what are the differences between the two myosin inhibitors? And that's a much longer conversation for probably another day. But what do you think right now? And I know we're in discovery stage, so can you answer this question?
So all right. So the question is, about the primary question is about the future. Is that?
Yeah. With Afi and Mava coming so fast, 5 to 10 years, what does the future look like? What do you think else is coming?
Well, I mean, I think that the answer there is, I think that if we look to the future, what I see coming is that we are going to see, for sure, efforts at trying to modify the therapies that are at the basis for aficamten and mavacamten, myosin modulation. So these therapies that are modulating the sarcomere, the structural apparatus of the heart. That's how aficamten and mavacamten work, there may be modifications that will be part of the evolution here with these kind of therapies that could, translate into differences in efficacy or how the drug is, potentially used or dosed, the ease of use, so the pharmacology of it. So there's going to be evolutions there. There are already a number of other drugs under investigation that modulate the sarcomere that are being evaluated in HCM, again, with the idea that where those drugs are targeting in the sarcomere, do they result in better effectiveness for both obstructive and non-obstructive HCM? And also, can they be used easier or differently than aficamten and mavacamten? That's sort of the 10,000 foot about the future in the next 5 to 10 years for myosin modulating therapies. I think gene therapy, I think there was some question about that. I mean, I think we're really far away, if ever, from, gene therapy as a practical therapy to consider in HCM. I think there's just an enormous number of questions that are going to take a long time to unravel with gene therapy that involve, what it's really doing in terms of effectiveness, what's it really doing to the HCM heart in terms of changes over time, in terms of safety, et cetera. I think, gene therapy is I believe for that reason, even more than 5 or 10 years out, perhaps.
I think you're right. I think the conversations are important to have, and we need to hear what people think about the development of these therapies and what their willingness is to try some of them. So we need to know what the patients want, what the scientists can develop, and where do we have a connection point if we do.
And the other point I'll just make too is that, I talked there just about the myosin modulator just real quick. I mean, I think there's going to be lots of efforts too at targeting, other mechanisms in the HCM heart that could be beneficial. And so, if that sort of effort works, you could look into the future. You could sort of imagine what exists for other forms of heart failure, not HCM, but that would be part of the landscape, maybe for HCM, which is multi-drug therapy. So more than one drug to achieve even greater effectiveness than what we have today, because you're using and leveraging the therapies targeting different aspects of why patients feel poorly with HCM. And so I think we're going to be looking at that as well here down the horizon.
And that brings, there's a whole bunch of other questions that brings in, including the development of things like poly pills, where you have multiple drugs in one dose. And I know a lot of my friends are working on areas related to that. I have dropped a link for another clinical trial opportunity. This is for the IMBRIA study. You want to talk a little bit about IMBRIA, and then we'll go back to some questions? Yeah,
that was probably the example that I was sort of thinking about, because it's obviously not only theoretical, it's actually being investigated, which is IMBRIA is a company that's made a drug called niraparib. It's kind of a difficult word to say, but niraparib. And it's a drug that was designed for HCM, non-obstructive primarily at this point. And it targets not the sarcomere itself, but the energy utilization that is occurring in the heart muscle cells. Okay. So it's essentially, to make it, what is a little bit of a complicated story simple, it's a drug that is shifting the utilization of energy in the heart from free fatty acids to glucose. And why that's just relevant is that glucose, if you're going to use that as your primary energy, is just much more efficient in giving the heart muscle more energy per heartbeat than usual. And if you're given more energy, then you're going to have ability to perhaps relax that stiff, thick heart easier and more efficiently. And if that occurs, you're going to fill the heart better, particularly during periods of exertion. And that may be the reason, ultimately that we hope that that's the reason that patients have benefit from this drug. And so that drug is currently being investigated for just that reason or purpose in a phase 2B study, which is an international study right now called Fortitude HCM. It's for patients that have symptomatic, non-obstructive HCM. And it's a drug improving energy metabolism and utilization to improve how patients with non-obstructive HCM feel and function through that mechanism. Okay. And so that represents, we don't know yet what's going to happen, of course, but that's the example I was thinking about when I was thinking about it's not just going to be about myosin modulation. I think we're going to looking at drugs with other targets to help here.
I love that. Okay. We have some questions. Obviously, we cannot do consult by podcast, but we're looking for ICD recommendations, SICD for a 20-year-old. What do you think about the options of devices that are available today? This has come up recently in my own family. So we have transvenous ICDs, we have SICDs, and now we have EV-ICDs. What should people consider in 2026 when getting a new device? We're not going to talk about replacing devices. That does happen on occasion, but you've got a new device choice, 20 years old, HCM, there's risk factors, EV, SICD, transvenous. How does somebody know?
Yeah, I think, that here's what I would say there is that, it's obviously a super important kind of conversation because there can be advantages and disadvantages. There are advantages and disadvantages to all the kind of device options. And of course, we always try to individualize some of this decision making depending on what's going on with that particular individual patient. But in general, I would say that, one thing to consider for young HCM patients that's really important here, and maybe one of the most important things, particularly because it impacts perhaps which type of device, is that, when you've got a young patient, you could be talking about, and you are talking about, very long periods of time that device would be implanted to protect them against sudden death. And so when we're talking about very long risk periods, then that also means that there is perhaps risk related to the device over that long period of time too. And one of the main issues that we talk about with respect to that are when we've got leads that are within the vein and in the heart, and that's the transvenous ICD, because we know that over long periods of time, if the lead is in the vein in the heart, that sometimes they can fail, those leads, sometimes they can become infected. There can be other complications of the vasculature there. And so age is really important because it can impact the risk of a device over long periods of time, particularly when we're talking about devices that have indwelling leads in the vein or the heart. Okay. In fact, that was really one of the main reasons why there was an enormous effort technologically to overcome that limitation, which resulted in the subcutaneous ICD itself coming to market, which got over that barrier of having a lead in the vein in the heart. And the subQ provides the opportunity to provide effective therapy with a lead that's under the skin, okay, not in the vein or heart. And so that is why that is potentially an advantage for a young person. Again, talking in general terms here. So that's really one of the major things to think about. I think we could go on, but I think one of the major things when we're talking about young HCM patients is the risk of device therapy related to leads in the vein or heart over long periods of time. That one other point about that, just to counterbalance that, the other point too is just to think about, for whoever asked the question as well, is that the other thing to think about are rates of what we call inappropriate shocks. Okay, so all of these devices, all of them, have a risk of shocking a patient for a rhythm that it shouldn't shock it for. Although they're very good and the rates of that happening are very low, we try the best to avoid that, not because it damages the heart, but because it psychologically for a lot of patients, obviously off-putting, and it carries a weight to it. So the other factor when we're thinking about device choice is related to that important point as well, because they all have a little bit different rates of inappropriate shock.
Thank you. Now we have a follow-up question from same poster. Should risk stratification really be different in different clinics? What are the variables in risk stratification for? Now, going back to the prior question, we're talking about a 20-year-old. Should we be using a Z-score in a 20-year-old for sudden cardiac arrest risk assessment? Complicated issues. You want to unpack that a little?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll just say that there can be some differences in how we approach risk stratification in pediatric patients compared to adult patients. One of those differences can be how we calculate the wall thickness of the heart, which is an important measurement because it can go to assessing one's risk of a life-threatening rhythm. So I don't want to get into too much because it gets complicated, and I don't know all the specifics here. But
we can do a webinar on that one. That gets a little too. We need some slides for that one.
Yeah, there are differences that are important. Again, I think it emphasizes that kind of question emphasizes the importance of getting good opinions from centers of excellence.
Speaking of which, what's recommended 2 years post septal myectomy for care? So Andrew, you're the guy with the pizza. You took the pizza, didn't you? I think you took the pizza from the meeting. It's a good thing, Andrew. So Andrew had a myectomy 2 years ago. What kind of care should somebody 2 years post myectomy be seeking at this time?
Yeah, well, in general, I mean, again, without knowing all the specifics, but in general, what we look at in terms of post myectomy follow-up and care is generally if patients are feeling great, which they usually are, and things are pretty stable in that sense, then it's usually an annual visit to an HCM specialist or your cardiologist, for sure, at least an annual visit that usually includes, an echocardiogram, an EKG, maybe also an ambulatory monitor, depending on your specific situation. And then evaluation of how you're feeling and doing as well, of course. And so that's generally what comprises the post-myectomy surveillance.
This brings up a really good point, and we're going to circle it back to the clinical trial for a hot second.
Yeah.
So we get a question a lot. Do I qualify for the non-obstructed trial because I used to be obstructed, but I had a myectomy and now my gradient is, and we can't answer their question until that last piece of information is given. What is your current gradient? If you've had a myectomy and your gradient is below 30, which most of them are post-surgery, you would typically qualify for a clinical trial for a non-obstructed physiology. Correct, Marty?
That's correct. For the most part, that is correct. There may be some nuances to that, but in general, that is a correct statement. Yep.
For the trials that we're currently recruiting for, if you're 6 months post-myectomy and they're looking for non-obstructed and your gradient is under 30, we know you're qualified there. And right. It's interesting. Even some of my staff is like, well, what do we call them? Are they obstructed or non-obstructed? I'm like, well, they were obstructed but had septal reduction therapy and are no longer obstructed. So that's our new definition for them. So if you are in that classification and you did have obstruction, do consider looking at the link for the non-obstructed trial. So that's great. Okay, we've got a tricky question, and we got time for one more after this. And I don't want to ignore this question. With the amount of money flooded into these current meds, isn't it scary? And why would these companies do everything to stop new medications and mechanisms? Sorry, that sounds negative, more negative than I meant. So we are living through a very unique time. And it's not lost on me that we're a patient advocacy organization that was very tiny until somebody decided to develop a pharmaceutical agent specifically for our drug. And yes, it's got a hefty price tag, but it also has patient assistance programs. And we also have insurances to pay, and there are systems to make sure people can get drug. But the development of these new drugs are so cumbersome. so long-term, so expensive. And we have to be reasonable. And it's expensive to build these drugs. It's expensive to get them out there. It's expensive to teach people about who needs what drug. And then we have to pay for the drug. I do think we're paying probably too much in this country for our drugs. I would like to see a way to bring those prices down, but the whole system has to shift. We need PBM reform. We need step therapy laws in place to protect people from having to go back to the beginning of the line every plan year because that insurance company wants them to try a beta blocker first, even though they failed it 3 years ago and went on to another therapy. We need to get a cleaner system for healthcare delivery. It's a mess, and I think we all know it, but we're all going to try to work together to fix it. Marty, any comments on the broken healthcare system of the United States?
No, I think you said it well.
Thank you. We don't have to keep going on that one. Is everyone living with HCM and some sort of heart failure just by inherently living with the disease? Meaning all folks with HCM have heart failure. So you want to talk about terminology and then?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I'll just say just high level first. No, I would not say that all HCM patients are living or have heart failure just because they have HCM. I would argue, actually, not argue, but I would make the case that that's not true. Actually, I would actually say that's the majority, the vast majority, who have HCM that have no evidence and will not have any evidence or experience heart failure at all throughout their entire natural history. Actually, that's actually the majority. When we talk about heart failure, it is a little bit of the nomenclature here is a little bit challenging because for the vast majority, by the way, for the vast majority of HCM patients too, who have symptoms because of HCM, they get labeled as having heart failure. Okay. But again, what I think we need to kind of move away from is for the vast majority of those patients that have symptoms, it's not really heart failure in the same way that we look at heart failure in other diseases, cardiac diseases. It's really a limitation. We've tried to replace heart failure now more and more with symptom limitation rather than heart failure. Because heart failure refers to when the heart is unable to meet the demands of the body in terms of cardiac output. But that's not why that's almost never why patients with HCM are symptomatic. They're almost always symptomatic, or the majority are symptomatic. The majority are symptomatic because of high pressures in the heart from obstruction. Okay. And that's not really the same type of heart failure that is being considered in almost every other form of heart failure that's not HCM. And so, not to get too complicated here and convoluted, let me just summarize. The vast majority of patients with HCM don't have any symptoms or limitations. They don't have heart failure, and they will never have heart failure. Number two, for those that have symptoms, the vast majority of them, those symptoms are not really heart failure. They're limiting symptoms.
She likes that answer. I have another one that's coming up that's really important, but I want to give a new epiphany that I've had recently. And I do not wish cancer upon anybody. It is a horrible disease state. But in common conversation today, if you were told by a friend, coworker, family member that they have cancer, your next question will be, what kind? Because we always want to know what kind of cancer do they have. Is it breast cancer? Is it colon cancer? Is it pancreatic cancer? And typically today, we all know enough by commercials and just talking to people who have cancer that there are genetic markers that can help guide their therapy. And so a typical conversation about somebody getting diagnosed with cancer would be, oh, what kind? Double negative breast cancer. We don't maybe know what it means, but we know that it's bad. And we know that it has its own treatment pathway. When somebody says, I have heart failure, we don't ask what kind. And if we asked what kind, well, it's HCM. Okay, well, that's a disease spectrum. It's not necessarily overt heart failure, advanced heart failure, but you might get short of breath sometimes. And it's a different gauge. And if somebody else says I'm in heart failure and I'm in advanced or congestive heart failure, that's more definitive. And that tells you what path they're on. It also gives you a hint of what is going on in your own family heart health history, who has what kind of heart failure. So I think we can take some educational learnings from the cancer community and start asking people what kind of heart failure and understanding a little bit more what these diseases are. Marty, this one came up, and I'm going to make this the last question of the day. Thank you all for a very robust conversation today. This person is also 2 years post-myectomy, but my sister is 8 years, and her doctor told her she doesn't need to be seen anymore. Does somebody who has had HCM and have a myectomy, should they be released from cardiac care at any point in their life? Does this disease maybe morph and change over time and other problems might pop up? What shall they do?
They shouldn't listen to that advice. I guess is what I would say.
I was trying to figure out how we were going to say this nicely, but let's say it.
Sometimes you just got to say it. That's just not correct. I don't know how else to say it, but no, of course not. And the person asking the question, of course, got that because they didn't feel that was made sense, which it doesn't. Right. You've got a heart disease. This is not a cure. Myectomy or CMI, those are not cures. They can substantially alter the natural history of patients in so many profound ways, but they're not cures. So patients still need to be followed, lifelong with HCM. Typically that's yearly if they're stable. Sometimes it can be more frequent than that. But patients need longitudinal follow-up.
Fantastic. Okay, Marty, a couple last minute messages here. Okay. For anybody interested in getting a frame for their social media for HCM Awareness Day, all you have to do is send a little message to Demi at 4hcm.org with your photo, and she'll put it in a frame and send it back to you. At last count, we were well over 300 people have gotten these frames so far, so let's get a lot more out there. Hopefully someday Facebook will come back and let us just load this and you can do it yourself. But until then, this is what we do. I am going to give you a little bit of a teaser, and you might start to see some of this on our Facebook and LinkedIn threads. On HCM Awareness Day, I will be presenting something pretty special. I haven't issued the agenda yet because we're making sure that we can get it to you on time. We will be featuring our brand new 25-minute documentary for our project called the All Hearts Collaborative. And it is a story of two amazing families from Norfolk, Virginia, one who lost a loved one and one whose young son was saved by CPR and AED and now was diagnosed with HCM. And it's an emotional, real story of families living on very different ends of the HCM disease spectrum. And it is also a call to action for all families to know their family heart health history in time to avert disaster. So we look forward to bringing that to you. And you're going to see some clips coming up on social media of the teaser. And we think that you're going to fall in love with these families, and you're going to understand why awareness is so important when families find out about HCM in ways that we really don't want them to find out. You shouldn't find out from a medical examiner, and you shouldn't find out when somebody calls you telling you your kid is on the way to the hospital from school. So we need to do more to get out there to get these early diagnoses. So absolutely, please tune in on February 25th. If you are in the New Jersey area, we have an open house that will start at 4 p.m. and run till 7 p.m. We have fantastic food. I've got amazing cookies coming. It's going to be a lovely day to celebrate and understand what we've been doing for the past 30 years here and what is to come in our future programming. So on that note, Marty, I offer my thanks to the entire team up there at Leahy. You guys are doing amazing work for these families. You got a lot of people educated today. So thanks for spending some time with us during Heart Month. Give my best to your dad. And we will, I'm trying to think, probably see you the next time at ACC in New Orleans.
Yeah, ACC, that's right. End of March. That's right.
Yes, but the beginning of March, guess what I'm doing?
What? Vacation?
An actual vacation. For the 1 week in the Florida Keys. Phone will be off. Don't talk to me. Yeah. Brain needs to shut down for a while. And then we'll come back.
You deserve it.
And then when we come back from Florida, we go immediately out to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I will be meeting the team out there for an in-person meeting. Simultaneously, Stacy will be at Cincinnati with Christ Hospital doing an event there. And while that's going on, Pam will be in Newark for an All Hearts event in New Jersey. So we will be live in 3 places on one day in March. We've got a lot of stuff going on out there. If you want to get involved in raising awareness, contact us today. Our new communications team is killing it, and we've got so many resources to get out there for you to help spread the word about HCM. Awesome. And on the other HCM Awareness Day thing, you're going to meet our family of characters. Think about the movie Inside Out and think about all of the emotions tied to HCM. So over the next year, you're going to be meeting a lot of amazing people. Marty, check this out. I think your daughter would approve. These are our new characters, and we are going to unpack HCM by talking about this through all the emotions and all of the thoughts that you have when you're diagnosed and when you deal with challenges. So join us for our Inside Out team as the year progresses. And we have some innovative new ways to teach about HCM, and we can't wait to share them with you all. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.
The Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association would like to thank our sponsors, Cytokinetics, Bristol Myers Squibb, and Edgewise Therapeutics.